Emma Smith faints as she sees her husband Joseph stumble to the front door, barely able to walk, and covered in blood, tar, and feathers. Several people from the neighborhood rush out to see what's happening. Emma and Elsa Johnson work through the night using lard and cornhusker knives to scrape the tar from Joseph's battered face and body. Now, earlier that night, Joseph had been rocking his baby boy, sick with measles, when a tapping at the window alerted him just before the front door burst open. Rushing in, several drunk, angry men wrestled and carried Joseph into the woods some distance from the house. Joseph tried to fight them off, but there were too many. Holding their other twin baby, Emma screamed, terrified at what was happening. Joseph said, "I was beaten, tarred, and feathered. My mouth was filled with tar and my tooth broke after they tried to get me to drink some poison. I saw Sidney on the ground near me and thought he was dead. So I begged them not to take my life. After scratching and beating me, they left me on the cold ground and ran away. It took me many attempts to clear the tar from my mouth and to regain the strength to walk home. I don't know about Sidney." Sidney had also been yanked from his house across the street, but the mob dragged him out by his heels, so his head bounced down each step and across the rocky, frozen ground. Delirious and barely breathing, Sidney was left for dead and eventually carried home by neighbors. For the next several days, people cared for Sidney as he teetered between life and death. The following day, like the Apostle Paul who'd been left for dead after being stoned, Joseph painfully got dressed and with body bruised and scabbed, preached a sermon from the Johnsons' doorstep. Joseph ignored the members of the mob listening to him in the audience and talked through the pain. But you know what? Later that day, he baptized 3 people who were in the crowd. Now, this attack had all started because some people in town believed the rumors, lies, and fake news that were circulating, and Satan had fanned that hatred into flames. Unfortunately, there were long-term repercussions because of this mobbing. Later that week, Joseph Murdoch Smith, Joseph and Emma's adopted baby boy, died from the exposure to the frozen night air from the door that had been left wide open when Joseph was dragged out and attacked. Joseph and Emma experienced extreme grief and heartache at the loss of their 4th baby. Sidney suffered pain and mental health problems for the rest of his life because of the head trauma he received during the attack. The Rigdons and Smiths moved back to the safer confines of Kirtland. And Joseph spoke with a whistle the rest of his life because of his broken front teeth from the attack. Now, even though blessings are promised, oftentimes bad things do happen to those doing God's work. Like Joseph and Sidney and Christ himself, many today suffer incredible hardships. There are countless stories of church leaders and members whose homes and sometimes loved ones are lost through fire or disaster, but who continue to focus on caring for their neighbors and serving their congregations. Good people throughout history go through hard things and triumph. Isn't it interesting that some of the best work, the biggest growth, and the most beautiful miracles occur when we aren't feeling that great? And despite people trying to stop the Lord's work, He's promised that nothing will stop His gospel. For instance, Jesse Gauss was promised many great blessings as he was called as a counselor to Joseph Smith in Section 81. Shortly thereafter, he left on a mission to the east with Zebedee Coltrane. But when Elder Coltrane became too sick to continue, Jesse went on without him and just disappeared. And while we don't know exactly what happened, he probably left the church. Frederick G. Williams was called to replace him and given the same promised blessings. Look, the Lord truly wants to bless and save each of us, but if we choose a different path, it might be someone else called to do His work and receive those blessings. As we're obedient, we receive many blessings, and the Lord says in the New Testament, and again in the Doctrine and Covenants, that, "Unto whom much is given, much is required." We also sing, "Because I have been given much, I too must give." Even our favorite web-slinger Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, struggled to understand his new abilities and remembered his Uncle Ben's words, "With great power comes great responsibility." Excellent advice. So, like Spider-Man and the early saints, we've all been given great blessings from the Lord, and He in turn asks us to help. serve, lift, and strengthen others. So, what do you think? Have you been given much? If so, will you stand strong like Joseph, or will your faith wilt under pressure like Jesse Gauss? We've got superpowers that can help us stay strong and make this world a better place. Next time, we'll see what answers the Lord reveals as missionaries return and give their mission reports.